The Gospels are filled with examples of Jesus and incidences of Jesus healing. But there are four specific stories I'd like to focus on for today. The centurion of Matthew chapter 8, the woman with the issue of blood in Matthew chapter 9, the Syrophoenician or Gentile woman who is found in Matthew chapter 15, and blind Bartimaeus from Mark chapter 10. An interesting observation about these four really needs to be mentioned. Two of them were Jews, and two of them were Gentiles. Two of them were men, and two of them were women. Two of them were socially unclean, meaning no one, including Jesus, under the law of Moses, could not touch them. Two of them were impoverished, along with being socially unclean. All of them were persistent. All of them sought Jesus out. All of them had obstacles that they had to overcome. None of them lacked faith. In fact, Jesus told all of them, because of their faith, they received an answer to their request. The Roman centurion represented the political upheaval that was in Israel at the time. Now, although in Luke's account, this Roman centurion was well liked by the Jews. In fact, some of the Jews were actually speaking up for him because the centurion was so good to the Jewish people. But nonetheless, he represented the Roman occupation of the land of Israel. And he, as a Gentile, understood the social disparity between he and this Rabbi Jesus. And when Jesus agreed to go to his house to help him, the centurion says, "No, I'm not worthy for you to come to my home." The centurion was following the social rules of the day. But then he goes a little step further and says, if you just say the word, it'll happen. Because I too understand, as a man of authority, that when I make a request, I give a command, people do it, no questions asked. And this answer of the centurion says amazed Jesus. And he says, I've never seen such faith in all of Israel. Yet a Gentile, a Roman at that, is exercising this faith. The obstacle was the social disparity, but he did not let that stand in his way. And Jesus says, because of your faith, because you believe, your servant is healed. This young woman that had the issue of blood, she was ceremonially unclean constantly. She was a social outcast. She could not go to the temple because of her medical condition. She's the only individual in the Gospels who was healed passively, meaning Jesus did not actively turn and touch her to heal her. She grabbed his clothing. Because of her faith, she says, if I just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be healed. That's faith. That's faith. And Jesus healed her in a passive way. And Jesus, Luke's gospel accounts this, that he turns around and he says, who's touched me? And he's in a big crowd, and the disciples are saying, everybody's touching you, everybody's bumping into you. And he says, no, somebody touched me for healing, wanted healing, because I felt virtue, I felt power leave me. Of all the people that was bumping up against him, there was only one who reached out to him in faith. This would have made Jesus ceremonially unclean according to the law of Moses. But he calls her, after seeing her faith, calls her daughter. He says, your faith has made you well. Bartimaeus, the blind beggar of Jericho. This is an interesting man. He's the one that addresses Jesus as the Son of David. This is a messianic term. A Jew would understand this term and what it meant. He's calling Jesus the Messiah, the descendant of David who will redeem and free Israel. But he's blind. Now, the law of Moses was very specific about conditions of blindness. If the blindness was due to infections, then that person could not be touched. If they were born blind, that was a different story. We don't know what Bartimaeus's condition was like. We do know one thing: he could not be stopped. He shouted and he shouted again and again, and to the point to where people were telling him to be quiet. They were trying to stop him, but because of his faith would not allow him to be quiet. His faith was persistent. And Jesus finally stops and says, bring him to me. And it says that when he was brought to Jesus, when he came to Jesus, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And he says, Lord, I want to see. Very direct in his request. And Jesus healed him, and he says, because of your faith. This young woman, this Syro-Phoenician woman, Canaanite woman, is what she's called in some gospel accounts, pleads with Jesus. And this is an interesting exchange because this woman was a Gentile, and she was a woman. She had no social standing among the Jews. She would have no social standing with Jesus because he was a rabbi. And she also refers to Jesus as the Son of David. But she was a Canaanite. She was a Gentile. And Jesus' interchange with this woman is unique because he ignores her at first, and she's persistent to the point to where the disciples are ready to push her aside, or ready to turn her away. And this little exchange it's very well known among Christian circles. When Jesus says, you can't take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. Now, this was more of a common proverbial saying because the Jews referred to Canaanites as dogs, as curs. But the word Jesus used for dog wasn't cur, like a rabid dog. The word Jesus used was pet. And he says, you can't take the children's crumbs and just give them to their pets. Now, we can't help but think this is still very demeaning. But I don't think Jesus meant it to be demeaning. I think, personally, the way he said this to her, and I have no way of saying for sure, but I would like to think that Jesus kind of smiled and winked at her as he was saying this. because of her faith. And notice what she says. Yes, Lord, but even the pets get the crumbs every now and then. And it says that he says, because of what you said, because of your answer, your daughter is healed. Now, these 4 individuals all sought Jesus out. Jesus did not seek them out. They sought him out. And it was their faith. According to Jesus, it was their faith. Because of their faith, they received healing. They received deliverance from demonic oppression. They received life back from sickness and from illness. Now, my question to you is, what do you feel is hindering you? Do you feel like your past, guilt, pride, unconfessed sin, your last name? Do you feel like these things are hindering you or stopping you? Take the lesson from these 4 individuals. They didn't let the social stigmas stop them. They all had 2 things in common. One, they were completely desperate, and they saw Jesus as their only hope. And 2, because of their faith, Jesus granted their request. They all sought one thing. It was the Lord's compassion, the Lord's grace and mercy. In fact, 2 of them said, "Have mercy on me." Where are you right now in your life? Are you at a point where you feel that all you need is just mercy and grace? You have nothing to bring, only your faith. And you are relying on the mercy and grace of Jesus Christ. Well, take note and take comfort from these 4 individuals that grace and mercy is available to you. Don't let the obstacles that are hindering your faith stop you. Have a breakthrough of faith.